After around 30 hours of gameplay, having completed every side quest, an 80% achievement completion, and a couple hundred gigabytes of recorded footage, I can confidently say that I have experienced most of what YIIK has to offer. For a game to have so many awful design choices, be so unfathomably exhausting to play, not to mention unpolished, and still have me finishing it, let alone leave such a lasting impression on me, is something I can't say many games have done. And I'm here to figure out why. What's the deal with YIIK? That's actually so awful. That is so... Before I get into this gem of a game though, please consider buying it and playing it yourself. I'm not about to hold back on spoilers at all, so you've been warned. If you're watching this video to begin with, you're likely pretty familiar with YIIK, but just to recap. YIIK, or Y2K, a postmodern RPG, is a JRPG set in the US in the 90s, developed by the small indie studio YIIK. Much like the name of the game suggests, YIIK sets out to challenge conventional design choices in RPGs, and for the most part it does succeed with that goal, just not always in ways that stick. At this point in time, YIIK has garnered a sort of ironic fanbase that earnestly appreciate the game despite, or maybe because of, its flaws, but I wasn't aware of this when I started playing. See, I heard about this game from two of my good friends, Bagingi and Well-Footed Shoe. When they made references to the game that I didn't get, they sort of jokingly said that I should play it and make a video out of it, and I went, oh, okay. I looked basically nothing up, did basically no research, bought it, and here we are today. So the bit isn't finished until this video is, so let's wrap this fucking thing up. As I mentioned before, YIIK has actually been infamous for a while among fans of indie games. I'm light years away from being original with this video. People have voiced their complaints with the game already, many times over even, and although YIIK have stated that they don't take criticism from random ass YouTubers, they've acknowledged the fact that their game is flawed, and a long time ago they set out to make it good. This has resulted in the somewhat minor update, Wrong Soul Requiem, or YIIK 1.25, being released in anticipation for the real patch, YIIK IV, or 1.5. When I played the game though, only 1.25 was out. It enables you to disable and change some of the elements of the game that people were most upset with. I, however, went with the vanilla settings because I wanted to experience the original experience. Speaking of experience, let's actually get into it. This script is so shit! YIIK takes massive inspiration from innovative JRPGs of the past, things like Persona and Mother. This manifests itself in a lot of minor and some major ways, but the game does make an active effort to set itself apart from those JRPGs. The art direction is one thing that stands out. A lot of environments and set pieces look genuinely freaky and cool. Look no further than the main menu itself. Even after having finished the game, the screen doesn't really tell me anything. It's not logical in the least. It just lets you bask in the chill, bizarre vibes it resonates, and I love that to death. There's an itch that few games scratch, and some of these visuals and story beats are a really fun part of the game. It's just a bummer that pretty much everything in between is so fucking exhausting. What doesn't help is also that the rest of the world looks kind of boring and lame, really simple and bright. Speaking of the world, let's look at the characters that inhabit it. This is so smooth. These transitions are so smooth, man. Now, this wouldn't have been an indie JRPG inspired by Earthbound if we didn't name our characters at the start. In Earthbound, naming the characters gives you a very personal bond to them. The characters don't talk much when they join the party, which lets you as a player project a deeper personality onto them. And having unique names really help with this process. The name of your characters in YIIK doesn't matter for 98% of the game. In this postmodern indie RPG inspired by Earthbound, where you name the characters after people in your real life, and where it's immediately apparent that they're not going to be used for the cast, it just becomes obvious that they're going to be used for some forced fourth wall breaking shit. What the names are actually used for is a somewhat cool idea, but the coolness of the idea is seriously harmed by how obvious it comes across. This became so obvious, in fact, that halfway through the game, I called the ending. Det kommer sluta så, fan! Det kommer vara så. All along, you were Alex. When it comes to the actual character of the cast, most of them just feel like slightly eccentric people. Or people that are written awfully. I seriously don't know how or what it is that causes it, but whenever characters interact in this game, it feels so weird. So unbelievable at worst, awkward at best. Is that his passion, and not like photography? And who better represents this game's writing issues than the main man himself, Alex? Alex is a fucktard. Seriously, this guy sucks so hard.
Your sister right now, we almost just died ourselves!
There it is, there it is.
He's an asshole, and the game tries to make sure that the player knows that this is a character flaw so that it can then lean on that to send a message at the end of the game. The message is that Alex is the worst possible human, and because of that, he is responsible for the world ending. But he really doesn't qualify as being that evil. He's just kind of a dickhead, that shits out monologues. Oh, And don't get me started. Seriously, stop me before I get into Alex's fucking monologues. Every time this motherfucker appears on screen looking straight ahead, I am shaking in my boots because sometimes he goes on rants. His rants are probably the literal worst video game writing I've ever had the displeasure of reading in my fucking life. All of them are riddled with padding, the most unnecessary vocabulary imaginable, and actually, like, unironically, the worst figures of speech I've ever heard.
Vibrating with motion.
There's this one edit of a Family Guy bit where Peter narrates his entire life in excruciating detail, and then someone put Alex on top of it, and the fact that it sounds completely in line with Alex should be telling.
I walked into the kitchen and sat down at the table. I looked with a grimace at the questionable meal Lois had placed in front of me.
This guy's fucking unbelievable. And also our main character. There's also Michael, who looks like MatPat. That's all you need to know about him. He's as bland as it gets. There's Vela, an interdimensional traveler with actual psychic powers. Rory, a pacifist emo. The siblings Chandra and Claudio. And the Essentia 2000. Chandra has a hula hoop, and Claudio is a raging weeb who owns a record store, and the Essentia 2000 is an android with a lot of importance to the story. She might as well be right next to Alex as the main character with how much screen time she gets. At least with how much screen time it feels like she gets, because she is dreadful every time she appears on screen. She spits exposition and independently sets up all these rules and... Actually, you know what? We'll get there. Don't worry about that. The game starts with Alex having finished college and being back in his hometown, Frankton. He gets told by his mom to go get some groceries, and it's 5 minutes in, and Alex already shows how unlikable and unrelatable he is.
He's already barking orders at me.
On the way into town, however, Alex's shopping list is stolen by this rando-ass cat who brings Alex to an abandoned factory. In this factory, he meets Sammy, and then she's kidnapped, much to Alex's sadness, discomfort, whatever the fuck this feeling is. The next day, Alex swears to find this girl, as she's gone completely missing, and barely anybody remembers her at all. He runs into his, friend? Michael. Like, come on, he's actually just MatPat though, right? They both go to the factory, meet a storeman, and then hit a dead end in their search, right after fleeing it.
What the hell was that? What the hell is going on? What just happened?
Shut the fuck up, oh my god. To find out more, the two go onto the Conspiracy Paranormal Activity Urban Exploration Forum, ONISM 1999, which also has probably one of the best tracks in the entire game. There, they found out that there's a girl, right here in Frankton, who's been spotted doing some really weird psychic shit. Enter Vela. She's really important for the rest of the story, but really doesn't leave a great first impression.
Epistemology is, of course, a branch of philosophy that...
Vela agrees to help look for Sammy, and the two soy boys head out to level 5, and soon, they've got a lead. Apparently, a guy in a nearby town has had this sort of same thing happen to his sister. It's like she was ridden out of the world. Together with a newfound racial tension...
You look vaguely ethnic?
Get used to that. The gang heads over to Windtown. The next segment is very likely one of the absolute worst parts of the game, like bar none, and I completely understand if this is where most people drop the game. Nope, that was even earlier. The reason this area sucks so hard is not only because it's full of padding, but also because the combat is some of the lamest, most unfair JRPG combat I've ever experienced. It's actually insane. It's completely insane. 2 damage! Oh my fucking god. Anyway, our reward for going through one-button minigame hell is meeting with this guy, Rory. He's the guy that made the post on ONISM in 1999. He leads the gang to the next dungeon, the sewers, as his sister disappeared around that area. This dungeon is... okay. It's absolutely not outstanding. The main problem is the combat. It still hasn't really gotten past that awful hill, but Rory and the party is pretty useful, so it's not as bad. The boss of this dungeon has faced some controversy in the past, actually. The starman that appears is an alternate soul of Rory, who entered this reality after escaping its own, going through the same suffering as this Rory has, namely being responsible for his sister committing suicide. He actually isn't, but he feels like he is. It's an okay twist at best, I guess, convoluted at worst. It's not that awful. The rules of the universe that the game is trying to set up don't really come across very easily in this cutscene, and only after finishing the game can I put things into perspective. But like, even then, it doesn't feel that smooth. Why could this just not have been his sister's soul? I don't feel like a rule saying that entities can't leave until they say goodbye or some shit would have messed with the story all that much. I don't know, it feels kind of clunky, whether they intended for it to be confusing or not. Anyway, before the Y team can finish discussing this, a Guardian of Realities appears.
Lemonade.
Yeah, real fucking tasteful, you guys. This is what people were bothered with. The intense and serious emotional state of the characters and the story being completely fucking shattered with this crazy random golden alpaca that says lemonade when they attack. So silly.
Fuck you.
Thankfully, the update takes the situation a lot more seriously. At times I even feel like it's maybe trying a little too hard. That said, this new cutscene is actually pretty damn cool. When I first played through the game, I thought the alpaca was just spouting nonsense here, but what he actually says about the characters reveals a lot about them, but once again, we'll be getting to that. Some of the camera work and visuals in this cutscene are also extremely cool and make me think the game, it just seems so much cooler than it is, you know? It feels out of place, and I think I understand why. This is probably what YIIK is aiming to make the game look like in the IV update, and dude, oh my god, I'm here for it. This is the type of shit I expected when looking at the Steam page for the game, you know? Like, just nonsensical, reality-breaking bullshit. That's great, I like that. The boss dies, and this leads to the dungeon being completely broken by space-time something, and we have to go back through another version of the dungeon to get out. And once again, this is pretty cool. This version looks infinitely better, has crazy cool environments, all these sections that shouldn't make sense, but you know, you still kind of get what they're about. And all along the path, you get to talk to the alpaca, who's as if he's being removed from every reality and timeline at the same time, appearing here and there for the rest of the game, mumbling about regrets and concerns. It rocks, it's really cool. When the gang gets out of the sewer, Alex is all pissy about it, acting like a white knight for Sammy, upset that this didn't lead to anything about her, and ends up being a dick to Rory.
And it gives a shield.
No one
that
cares about your
looks
sister
like-
right now. We almost just died ourselves.
There it is. There it is.
And just like that, it's chapter 3 time, and the gang is now split. Oh, hello.
Eagleston, also the hot chick heaven.
Bum, 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 bum. What made him this way? What is the attraction?
Oh, that's what he's watching. I get it. Though.
Alex gets woken in the night by a soul survivor with a,
Holy shit! Look at that.
feminine figure. It leads Alex to an abandoned radio tower where the sleeve for an LP is laying in wait for him. The entity thing makes it clear that it wants Alex to play it in the tower, but since the sleeve is empty, he has to go out and look for the actual LP. The next day, he rallies his friends to set out to find it, eventually taking him to a new town, Flagtown, also known as the home of another awful track. The two meet Chandra and Claudio for the first time, and they agree to take Alex and his friends, minus Vela at this point, to meet a guy named Mark, who apparently has a huge collection of LPs. To get there though, we get to our third dungeon. This dungeon is not that awful, for sure better than the first half of the sewers at least. There are some fun puzzles involving multiple floors and shooting the cat off screen to pull levers, and the problems with combat aren't really as rampant, although still there for sure. At the top of the mountain, we indeed do find this Mark guy, who takes us on an annoyingly unnecessary rant about complete fucking bullshit before telling us that he doesn't have the LP. That he can't have it, in fact. And it's only at this point Alex actually looks at the front of the fucking sleeve, and it turns out that Vela is the creator of the LP. What the fuck? Why is it revealed this way? Like, can't Mark have had some connection to her to know that it was hers or something? He's obviously aware of different realities and stuff. Like, this is, unironically, the clumsiest way I could ever imagine doing this. Well, whatever. Alex takes a gang back to Vela and asks her to tell... Dude, Jesus fucking Christ, it can't be this hard. It literally cannot be. Well, whatever. Alex takes his gang back to Vela and asks her to tell them what it's all about and where they could find it. She isn't sure herself, but they hatch a plan to enter Vela's mine dungeon to find out. Oh yeah, the mine dungeon. I didn't explain that yet. Well, it's kind of like it sounds. It's a space where someone can go to peer deep into their own soul and mind and stuff. It's where you level up, so that's how you know it's got some deep connection to your brain. There, that's YIIK's first gameplay story integration. Good job. Anyway, Vela's mine dungeon is also the 4th dungeon of the game, and it's pretty much everyone's favorite, and I don't think I'm any different. Once again, the visuals here are really cool, all playing off of Vela's character and backstory, which is an interesting prompt to design a dungeon around, especially in this game in particular, with all its alternate reality self stuff. It's structured really neatly, plays satisfyingly in comparison to the rest of the game at least. It's a high point. We end up getting the record and playing it. Apparently, it's shit. Nobody likes it. But sounding like shit only seems to be its secondary purpose, because when the gang plays it in the radio tower, Alex has some strange visions of an android that he's been dreaming about the entire game. The song seems to have woken her up, and we get to play as her for a single fight against 2 soul survivors. Interestingly, actually, the robot damages the entity, something that was completely impossible before, which, yeah, that's neat. tells me that shit's getting real. There, that's YIIK's second and probably final gameplay store integration. The heroes of Eagleston then set out to find the van that the android is confined in, which leads them to a parking lot of a mall. The keys to the van, though, have been stolen by a bunch of emo kids, and we have to beat 3 children to death to get them back. With the world freed from the tyranny of these children, we go back to the van, and Alex has a whole trip out with the android. This is where the game gets batshit. The Essentia 2000, as it's called, exists in every single reality simultaneously, and is aware of all versions of her soul. Apparently, she shares her soul with both Sammy and Vela, and explains that Sammy indeed did leave this reality just as Alex had met her back in the factory. She also explains a little bit more about how switching reality works. Apparently, when a soul leaves a reality, it leaves space for another, but only those with a parallel soul to the departed, or someone with a strong bond to them, can actually enter the new reality. The Essentia entered just as Sammy left and manipulated Alex into awakening her physical body, which had been broken throughout the game up to this point. She then takes Alex through her own mind dungeon, and this is the next dungeon of the game. The dungeon itself isn't that bad. It's got one of the craziest vibes and some pretty fun puzzles, at least the ones that aren't bullshit. The combat would be worse since it's only Alex and the Essentia, but luckily for us, the Essentia is really strong and balanced to one-shot most enemies, so it kind of evens out. After abusing stuns to get past the boss, we're treated to what we came here for. Essentia exposition! Yeah! These next 20 minutes or so are spent on Alex reflecting on himself, trying to accept that he's been kind of a fucked up person. As a player though, thinking of all the times Alex was a genuine asshole, only that one time after the sewer comes to mind, but the game really wants to hammer it into you that he's bad. So, you know, it makes it kind of hard to be on the game's side for this one, but sure, I guess, only because the last 2 dungeons were kind of good. Things might get a wee bit grim from here, you've been warned. Way back at the start of the game when we chose those options for the game, you remember when I was talking about the updates? Yeah, those. There was an option to disable this from happening, but I obviously didn't want to miss out on anything, like the true YIIKster I am. When Alex gets out of the dungeon, he's apparently been lost for a long time, worrying every one of his friends and his mom too. Soon, Vela calls and tells Alex that Rory has committed suicide. Actual suicide, not reality traveling. The scene that follows actually got to me a smidge, I remember. I didn't nearly start crying or anything, but it did feel kind of bad. You know, for once the characters actually seemed to act really human about something. There was a lot of emotion pulsating through the screen. And, you know, as if that wasn't enough, you get this creepypasta-esque unique render of Alex that's, like, actually unsettling. It's actually kind of weird. It's creeping me out. Rory taking his own life is something I could have prevented, but simply didn't think to do, and I kind of like that I'm reaping the consequences of that. It doesn't feel that forced for some reason. I don't know why. You can save Rory by inviting him when you go to the mall, which is something I just didn't think to do. You know, it's like the game's punishing me for not being invested in my friends, and I don't know, I think that's kind of cool. I immediately knew exactly what I should have done to save him. I just have no idea why I didn't. Sadly though, Rory's death has pretty much nothing to do with the rest of the game, which sucks. Okay, so that's Rory's arc done. That was pretty emotional. Let's look at the most memorable character's arc instead. Michael goes shirtless. I mean, yeah, it's a little more than that, but that's the biggest consequence this has on the game at large. What actually happens is kind of a cool idea. Michael gets lost in the mind dungeon and discovers all of his parallel selves, enlightening him, making him aware of all realities, you know, like the Essentia. And as any sane man would, he permanently takes off his shirt because of this. That's kind of all. I actually really like the idea of this. It's hinted throughout the game that Michael never actually existed in this reality, like he's just been stitched into the fabric of time-space and memories have been forged around him. It's really cool. Like, some people just don't ever remember him existing. That definitely should be. And, you know, at one point you go into the house and they go like, no Michael has ever lived here and things like that. And it's a really cool idea. It just kind of feels like it has clumsy timing, you know? Like, this doesn't change anything for me for the rest of the game. Okay, next is the Persona segment. We get a whole month to grind and spend time with our friends, minus Rory. And in one of them... Okay. I didn't mean to. I just got Bella. Whoops. The rest of the conversations aren't really anything special. It's for the most part the cast bonding, celebrating Christmas and Thanksgiving, and lightly discussing space-time. These moments are very welcome though. It's at these points that the characters actually start to feel like genuine friends. These are some of the most realistic ways they've ever talked to each other. You know, like they talk to each other like actual friends would. Sadly for us, it's also the last time, because all of this builds up to the New Year's Eve, when the world is supposed to end. Time does as it has, moves on, and soon the New Year's Eve is upon Alex and his friends, and the world is immediately fucked. Nothing adds up. The world has no structure. Everything is just illogical. This is sick as fuck. It hits you so quickly and dramatically that it makes you think you should have been able to see it coming had you just known beforehand what would happen, you know, like what to look for. The crazy part is, you can. You absolutely can. There are numerous moments in the story where strange happenings that aren't elaborated on, past Alex's screaming, of course, foreshadow a lot about the game, and, like, it's great. This is another one of those moments where it feels like the game is providing you with what you expected, you know, when you were looking at the store page. Almost the craziest part is that none of his friends are aware what's happening. Like, it's all like they're all dead already. But then, YIIK writing happens. Instead of letting the player deal with their own confusion, ask their own questions, and revel in the shock at it all for once, even for a moment, the game, or should I say the Essentia and Alex, incessantly monologue and explain exactly what it is that's going on around them, and most of it isn't even news. Like, yeah, I know something is fucking wrong. Look at the video game. Let me have this mystery. It hits so much harder if you just let me have it. In fact, I don't even feel like showing you what's being talked about in this section of the game, because I guarantee you that whatever you come up with would be much better than whatever the fuck it is they're talking about, because it's what you see. We soon reach Times Square and try to fight off the entity that's about to end the world, a sort of manifestation of Alex, and we fail in a scripted loss. A really slow and drawn-out scripted loss, but, you know, that's just combat in YIIK in general, so I guess that's a given. The world ends. Alex finds himself drifting in soul space, missing what he had, desperately trying to figure out if there could possibly still be a way out, a way back. Eventually, Alex comes across the same things that Michael did, his parallel selves, and Alex spends what feels like an eternity trying to find a way out. Eventually, he makes up his mind, finds a world that has yet to meet its end, and tries to reach out to that reality's Alex. It's me. I'm this unscathed reality's Alex.
To my long story.
Dude. Don't do this. Man. No, man.
Me and you.
Alex has, through this game, been reaching out to me, and the whole game is revealed to all just have been an explanation of how Alex got to this point, to ask me for help. And then all the names that I entered at the start come into play, as all party members, apart from Rory, still. Damn, that one stinks. I returned to Alex with weird outfits and the names I entered at the start. These are parallel versions of my friends, and with their help, me and Alex seek to destroy Alex's destructive aspects, such as his laziness or consumerism. This is actually where the game is heading. Since I'm on the team, these battles go by quickly, and soon we're faced with the last area of the entire game. It's revealed that this guy, Proto-Alex, the alternative Alex that's responsible for the countless worlds ending, is some sort of almighty being, a god, I guess. Somewhere along his long existence, Proto-Alex was split into two, leaving himself and the Essentia 995, a version of the Essentia who, unlike Proto-Alex, is aware of the real Alex's journey, which likely means that this Essentia is parallel to the one we've played the game with, seeing as they're both aware of, you know, everyone's existences and all that. Proto-Alex then reveals the truth. That being that the Essentia 995 had been manipulating Alex from the very start. It created a fake parallel version of itself, Semi, that would inexplicably set Alex down the path of finding Proto-Alex, giving Alex this weird attraction towards finding her. All the soul-searching Alex did with our Essentia just turns out to have been manipulation. She wanted Alex to think that he was a bad person so that he could be more willing to end the proto-version of himself, to set the Essentia free. Why? Well, we don't really get to know, but I'm not pressed about that at all. I think it's cooler like this. Me and Alex, we try to end this guy, but we just can't. We simply cannot separate Proto-Alex and the Essentia 995. And so, we do what you do. We decide to literally pull the plug on his soul. Delete it. As I interpret it, this ends the Alex and Vela souls completely, right? Leaving only me, like, IRL me, standing for whatever reason, even though I'm supposed to be Alex, right? Game done! That's it! That's actually all! Play the credits! Oh my god, I'm so fulfilled right now! I seriously cannot believe how it feels like that ball was dropped so hard on the ending. I legitimately feel like the ending was building up wonderfully. A perfect amount of reality-breaking plot twist bullshit. It was just cut so short. To me though, the biggest weakness about this ending is how it makes it all about Alex once again.
Throughout the entire game, Alex has been slowly gaining a conscience, human emotions and whatnot. Rory's death seemed to be like a genuine breaking point for him. It just feels like he forced himself to change for the last little bit of the game. And yeah, maybe this is just me looking back a little too fondly on the last few hours of the game, but I genuinely don't remember Alex being so insufferable during those hours, during all those friend hangout sessions. It really felt like he hung out with these people, you know, because that's what he wanted. He's gotten humbled by the world at that point, so it's pretty upsetting that at the end of the day, the world literally did revolve around him. In the end, only he could call on you, who is also him, for help. It just doesn't sit right with me. It partially erodes the entire message of the game. The message, by the way, is supposed to be kind of passing the torch over to the player, make them think about what exactly they're doing, who they are, and what they should do to better themselves. Just like Alex did, because if you don't, you'll end up being the cause of the world ending. Trust. But it doesn't stick, because I haven't been invested in the game at all up to this point. The inclusion of me, literally me, the player, felt way too overdone. It should have just been like strongly hinted to or something, because I don't know about everyone else, but it doesn't really feel good to be told that if you don't better yourself, your ass is gonna end the fucking world, you know what I mean? So this is the official, like, canon ending to the game, but there is a secret ending. It involves Alex entering the KNN building, the Korean News Network building where Sammy used to work. The section looks pretty cool, both the puzzles in it and the visuals. I didn't end up playing it. I couldn't bring myself to open the game back up. It's just too fucking bad that this ending solves literally fucking nothing. Not a single thing at all. In fact, this is an infinitely worse ending than the regular one. It ends with Alex finding Sammy in the building and escaping this reality with her. Except, she's talking to you. She's talking to me, the player. It's so jarring. She's like overjoyed to be able to run away from her troubles, madly in love with you, the player. So this alone is really fucking stupid, naturally. Suddenly the story was about love all along, not becoming your best self, I guess. What Sammy says in this cutscene is so fucking stupid. It just feels like the writer's greatest fantasy come to life. This whole thing gets a lot stupider though, and a lot darker actually if you know who Sammy is actually based on. Sammy's story was based on a real-life occurrence. A real-life mystery that the police have yet to solve and likely never will. In February 2013, in Los Angeles, a 21-year-old named Eliza Lamb was lost and later found dead in a hotel water tank on the roof. Murder, suicide, nobody's been able to say. The only real proof out there are these unsettling videos of her contorting her body and pacing in and out of an elevator. With this in mind, I think it's clear to see how seriously fucked it is of ACT to write the secret ending like this. It's one thing entirely to base a character on this. I don't think that's all that bad, to be honest. It shouldn't be, on paper. It's another entirely to have the character fall madly in love with the player. Not even the main character, just the actual fucking player. It's senseless. I really don't understand what the message is trying to send is here. Like, there probably isn't even one, to be fair. It's just... there's just tastelessness. And that was, as sorry as I am to say it, all there is to YIIK story. All in all, I have to be honest, it has a couple upsides. It's kind of fun thinking back on due to its novelty, but needless to say, it feels like it misses certain beats that would just make it satisfying all around. Sort of like the ending and how Michael in general is handled and so on. It just screams potential to me. With the exception of the alpaca, the story hasn't changed at all with the 1.25 update, but soon, YIIK IV comes out, which promises a fully redeveloped story featuring 2 whole new characters, possibly at the expense of the Essentia, which is a very, very welcome change. So, that was the plot. If you call your game a postmodern RPG, you obviously have to bring some unique and interesting design choices to the table. YIIK has unique allure, it just doesn't always belong on the table. The music's for sure one of those parts of the game. Unique, sometimes good, sometimes atrocious. There's some serious bangers in this game. Alex Eagleston, ONISM 1999, Minor Conversation. There are a few exceptionally nice sounding soundtracks in this game, but on the other side of the spectrum we have... It's baffling how you thought it sounded alright. It doesn't even sound nice as like the spectacle or like an emotional thing, you know? There's no novelty, it's just fucking draining to listen to. Like, I'm genuinely fearing for my hearing whenever I listen to this. This can't be healthy. Normally the music fits the situation pretty well, and although there were a couple of times the mixing was off, I really don't remember when that was. It was that insignificant. All in all though, the music really isn't that bad. Some themes are thematically nice, some are just nice, but they are for the most part pretty creative and fresh, even if that results in clashing styles at times. It's something I'm not really concerned about personally. I'd much rather the music be good than, like, cohesive, you know? Another genuine strength this game has is its set piece design. In almost all dungeons there are these crazy cool and creative environments that are seriously a joy to look at sometimes. I'm sure symbolism could be found in some of them, but to me really doesn't have to be that deep. This is YIIK we're talking about. Its whole thing is being weird as hell and unexplainable, and the set pieces are plenty of that. For the most part, the puzzles in this game are great too, typically adapted into the environment with a genuine twist solution that you never really get stuck at. They feel great to solve. Being a small-scale indie game published by an indie game-centric publisher, it's to be expected that the game has a few objective technical flaws. The game feels stable enough. I never had it crash or anything, but I did run into a game-breaking glitch that made me have to restart the game. I can't remember exactly what it was that caused it, but the camera got stuck in a really weird angle where I couldn't see anything. Restarting the game fixed it, but I remember losing an hour or so of progress to it, so that was a bummer. The controller integration isn't all that great either. I was using a Switch Pro controller. I know, far from the standard, but the triggers never registered inputs in-game, and some of the left-right inputs were also kind of broken. This kind of shut me down completely from using both time energy as a mechanic, but also the full combo of Vela's heal, which was really annoying in the early game. Claudio's Bushido is also annoyingly programmed. If you flick the stick in a slightly slow manner, it sometimes manages to register an input the other way when it flicks back, and it makes you lose the minigame instantly. Again, these are small gripes. They really didn't sour my experience with the game. I just wanted to mention some of them from, well, what's left, my own sake, I guess. On to the combat. YIIK combat fucking sucks. I think everyone that's tried the game can agree with me on that. Every single attack has you doing minigames that take up to 10 seconds to complete, and each completed minigame only deals fractions of damage to the enemy. Now that I think about it, I seriously don't think there's a single thing I would actually consider good about YIIK's combat, just like mid at best, which is insane. This is, of course, bad. Battles are, like most JRPGs, a huge part of the game, but every time it's time to battle, I just can't help but groan. It just takes so fucking long to get through. There are other RPGs that have long battles too, for sure. I like Octopath and Xenoblade has some long fights, but these fights are actually interesting. You have things to keep your mind on, things to pass the time with, also known as fun. Every time I think about YIIK combat, I really can't help but think back to the first time you get to Windtown.
2 damage!
God, that area sucked so much. It's not like I wasn't equipping my party either. Everyone had the best gear possible, and you couldn't possibly want to argue that I was under-leveled or something. The game expressively told me to become level 5 before progressing. Shouldn't that mean that reaching level 5 is going to give me the best, like the most honest experience according to the devs? And then one missed block puts Michael at 1 HP? From full? This area is scaled so incredibly awfully. I genuinely have no fucking idea how I got past any sort of playtesting. It wasn't even a fun type of challenge because the combat was deathly slow and I couldn't really put any thought into it, even if I wanted to, since the only thing my characters could do at that point was attack. The regular attack, at least that was of any fucking value. It wasn't even annoying because I was playing on the old settings or anything. I went back to record the first few hours for the sake of this video and decided for the fuck of it to leave the element gimmick on. That's the new thing, and it changes practically nothing. You're still gonna take tons of damage, and you're still gonna deal no damage at all. It only changes what characters are viable from fight to fight. Oh my fucking god, the boss of Windtown is also so fucking atrocious. It might actually be one of the worst JRPG bosses. Definitely top 3, like at least. It goes on and on and on for literally 20 minutes, doing the same shitty one-button minigames with actually possibly some of the worst music I've ever heard in a fully finished and released video game in the background.
Michael!
Yeah, that is... Okay, the song's moved.
The fuck, man.
Why did they have that?
I really don't think anything comes close to how shitty this is. At least not that I've played. I know I keep saying, oh, this is probably the worst RPG aspect ever, but that's, like, it's because it is. Time and time again. Both up to this point and for the rest of the game, YIIK misses extremely hard on some of the most generic RPG parts. It really does not feel good to play, to be frank. A lot of other bosses in YIIK are also awful. They rarely ever feel like adversaries. It's rare to have a reason to want to fight them. Oh my god, the fucking emo kid boss. Oh my lord. This fucking boss is so atrocious. Holy shit. Its central gimmick is that it has an AoE attack that always deals a party member's max HP -1 in damage, so they'll be left with 1 HP if they're full. The shitty part is that it can and will still kill you, you just need to have full HP at all times to not risk getting one-shot by it. The boss does this attack every few turns or so, and because items restore based on percentage, for some fucking reason, it's incredibly hard to stay topped up, especially if you're not using Chandra's item spread. It's also incredibly, and I mean unbelievably tanky. 20 whole fucking minutes on my first attempt, and the boss was only at half HP. That is undefendably bullshit. This fucker took me some tries, but after like my 4th attempt, I managed to beat him in only like 10 minutes, but that was by exploiting sleep and stun. These two effects are, as it turns out, extremely broken, completely shutting down the boss. He didn't get to move a single fucking turn except for the first one. And yeah, that still took me 10 fucking minutes to complete. He was a complete sitting duck, and it took me 10 minutes of just minigames. This is something you can do in pretty much every fight, by the way, especially if you're up against one enemy. You can just kind of auto-win. So, you know how in Pokemon and Persona, whenever you level up, you get this quick graphic that shows your improvement, usually looks great, usually feels great, it's just efficient, right? Well, YIIK's postmodern solution to this glaring flaw in modern RPGs is to make leveling up a chore. I legitimately loathe every time my characters have enough XP to level up, because it means I have to go to the fucking mine dungeon. The mine dungeon looks like this. It's got numerous floors that represent a level each, and the 4 doors represent a stat increase or a skill gain. To perform the simple act of leveling up, you have to gather the required XP, go into the mine dungeon, and go to a door. Assign the stat increase to whatever stat you want it on. Do the same for the other doors. Then, walk through the stairway and pay the XP to level up. What the fuck, man? And that doesn't even take you back into the game. You need to walk out of the mine dungeon yourself. It's not even like it's a spectacle or anything. Like, the novelty wears off. You do this more than 50 times in a fucking playthrough. The mine dungeon is such an incredibly unnecessary part of this game in its current form. It has lore value, I suppose, but it slaughters the flow of the gameplay cycle. It also isn't a good way to actually gain the stats, since, like in every fucking game, 1 point of strength is much more valuable than a single point of health. In the Essentia dungeon, my Alex got one-shot by almost everything. I feel like it might have been impossible without the Essentia. Even if I wanted my Alex to be tanky as fuck, I wouldn't be able to build him like that, since every stat only allows for 1 stat increase per level. It ends up making Alex relatively balanced, no matter what you do. I hard focused strength for my Alex, and although it ended up paying off in the late game, he still had pretty average stats compared to the rest of the party. Like, why even give me the choice of what stats I spend my increases on, when Alex will end up roughly the same anyway? Just do this obnoxious shit for me. The skills in this game are also so fucking weirdly handled. Every character either has a couple really good skills or no skills worth using at all. Some of them are also completely fucking broken. Alex's LP toss is either useless or overpowered depending on if you get a combo going in the late game. And once you have the LP strike skill, you can one-shot literally every single regular enemy with it. I know that might not sound impressive for a late game, but you have to remember, this is YIIK combat. A regular attack would take like maybe 1/8 of an enemy's HP.
2 damage.
It's that bad. Fuck man, I've said enough. This video needs to end. The script is long enough already, so you'll have to take my word for there being a lot more things that I could talk about when it comes to YIIK. So to answer the question I set out to answer at the start of the game, what's the deal with YIIK? Well, I guess nobody but the devs can say for sure why the game ended up like it did, but to me it just feels like passion is at fault. Too much passion. Passion to the point where it seems it might have made the devs a teensy little bit ignorant to some of the game's flaws. Passion for creative ideas that feel awful in practice. Passion for messages that have a little trouble sticking the landing and need some help. Passion for characters that aren't really interesting to someone who sees them for the first time. At the same time though, I really want to make it clear that this video is not about shitting on the game itself. I honestly think it's much better than what people give it credit for. I swear, the most annoying thing ever are comments like these, that really just get wrapped up in this self-induced hate boner for the game. No matter what you dislike about YIIK, it is undeniably a video game, a fully finished product, just as much as it is art. Shaky art, annoying art, draining art, but art nonetheless. And I've always respected the game for that much, and I feel like everyone should. I seriously cannot wait to see what happens to this game once the IV releases out. You bet your asshole I'm making a video on that too, by the way. I'd like to reiterate that you should absolutely consider buying the game for yourself. If you've seen the story at this point, I guess it sort of loses its purpose, but believe you me, there's a good chunk more about the game and plot that I simply don't know how to cover within a reasonable time frame for this video. And even then, getting it in anticipation for the IV release is absolutely still viable. It's shaping up to be completely different. Making this video took me a whole year of half-assed semi-monthly work, writing and rehashing this fucking script that's taken insanely long, but finally, the bit is finished. And by God, was it worth it. I actually can't believe it's been 2 years since I last uploaded. That shit ain't right. I mean, I've always taken a long time to upload, but this is a new low. And you wanna know a secret? This 40-minute long script is a massively cut down version of my first script. So this script is like 12, 13 pages all in all. My first one was at page 8 when I got to Windtown. I decided to scrap that thing. And since then, I've been rehashing the script over and over again, and I think that whole debacle is part of the reason why I think it's been hard for me to work on this video. It doesn't matter now, though. All that's besides the point. And also, I'm just not gonna remake this video for the 20th fucking time, so you know what? What you see is what you're gonna get. If you watched this far, I'd like to give you a sincere thank you. That's more than I can ask of any of you. And also, a sorry. Sorry that this is the most lukewarm YIIK video you'll ever see. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't do video essays. I don't know how to. And yeah, I guess I'll do the old classic as well. Go subscribe to these guys, Total Chads, especially Bagingi for serving as emotional support through most of YIIK. Oh, and my Twitch too, yeah, go to my Twitch too. It's gonna pay off. One of these days I will stream, that's a promise. Anyway, I can't guarantee when the next upload is. I think it's gonna be Half-Life? I don't know, but like I literally have not played Half-Life since I finished Half-Life 2 on my channel. It's actually been years at this point, oh my god. All this is to say, thanks for watching, and if nothing else, I'll see you when the YIIK IV update is out. That's a guarantee, that's a promise. Take care until then. Bye bye.